The rain had always been Emma's favorite sound. There was something about the gentle tapping against her apartment window that made the world feel smaller or intimate, as if it were just her and the storm. Tonight, though, the rain was heavier than usual, thundering across the rooftops in a way that made the walls tremble. Emma sat on her worn sofa, hugging a soft blanket around her shoulders, staring out at the blur of streetlights shining through the downpour. Her apartment felt unusually quiet, almost too quiet. For weeks now, she had been alone, her small circle of friends preoccupied with their busy lives. Even the little chats she used to have with neighbors had dwindled. Emma tried not to dwell on it, but sometimes the silence pressed too hard, making her heart ache with a loneliness she couldn't quite name. She glanced at her phone, scrolling through messages she hadn't sent, drafts of texts she had deleted, thoughts she hadn't shared with anyone. It was strange how she could be surrounded by people in the world, yet still feel invisible in her own life. She shook her head, trying to push the feeling away, and poured herself a cup of tea. The steam curled upward, carrying the faint scent of honey. A small comfort against the storm outside. Emma's eyes drifted back to the window. The street below was nearly empty, only a few cars passing, their headlights shimmering on the wet pavement. She sighed, a soft, almost inaudible sound, wishing for something, anything, to break the monotony of the evening. It wasn't that her life was unhappy. It wasn't. But something in her heart had been quietly yearning for more than routines and solitary evenings. A connection. Spark. A sign that someone out there might notice her, really see her. Even for a fleeting moment. A sudden flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by a low rumble of thunder. Emma instinctively pulled the blanket closer around her, feeling a shiver of anticipation. It wasn't fear that ran through her, it was something else. A sense that tonight, despite the storm, something unexpected might happen. Something that could shift the pattern of her quiet, ordinary life. The knock at her door came then, soft but urgent, almost like a hesitant question. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Who could it be at this hour? She wasn't expecting anyone, not a friend, not a neighbor, not even a delivery. She hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the door. Then slowly turned the knob. Standing there was Alex, her next-door neighbor, soaked from head to toe. His dark hair was plastered against his forehead, water dripping from the collar of his coat. He looked flustered, tired. And yet there was something undeniably familiar in his eyes, something that made her chest tighten unexpectedly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. "I didn't know where else to go. The storm. My power went out. Could I? Maybe wait inside for a little while?" Emma felt a strange mix of surprise and curiosity. She had seen Alex around grocery trips, casual greetings in the hallway, but they had never spoken beyond polite pleasantries. And yet there was something in the way he looked at her now. A vulnerability that tugged at her heart. "Of course," she replied, stepping aside. "Come in before you catch a cold." As Alex stepped in, droplets of water fell onto the doormat, and Emma quickly grabbed a towel, handing it to him. For a brief moment, their fingers brushed. It was a simple, accidental touch, but it carried warmth, a spark of connection that made Emma's heart flutter. They moved to the living room, where the storm's rhythm against the windows created a cocoon of sound around them. Alex wrapped the towel around his shoulders, giving her a small, grateful smile. Emma noticed how tense his shoulders had been, how tired his expression looked, and she felt an unexpected surge of empathy. "I don't usually bother my neighbors," Alex admitted softly, almost shyly, "but tonight it felt like I had no other choice." Emma nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. There were moments in life when you had to reach out, even if it was uncomfortable or uncertain. And maybe that's why this knock at her door felt like more than coincidence. It felt like possibility. As the rain continued its steady descent, Emma found herself studying Alex, noticing the little things she hadn't before. The way he brushed wet strands of hair from his forehead, the quiet steadiness in his voice, the way his eyes seemed to hold unspoken thoughts. There was a story behind those eyes, she realized. A story that matched the longing she felt in herself. For the first time in weeks, Emma felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared to hope for: connection. Warmth, the promise of an unexpected chapter in her life. The storm outside was still raging, but inside, Hurain had softened into a steady drizzle, and the occasional flash of lightning had faded to distant glimmers on the horizon. Emma and Alex sat across from each other on the living room couch. The warmth of the blanket she had wrapped around them, both adding an unexpected comfort. There was a quiet between them now. One that wasn't awkward, but filled with the weight of things unsaid. Emma found herself studying Alex, noticing small details she had never paid attention to before: the slight curve of his smile, the way his eyes seemed to reflect the storm outside, or the nervous way he traced patterns on the edge of the towel with his fingers. She felt an inexplicable tug at her heart, a feeling she couldn't name but recognized as something rare. The stirrings of connection, you know? Alex began, his voice soft. "I remember the first time I saw you." Emma tilted her head, surprised. "You do?" He nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, it was. A few months ago when you were walking your dog in the park. You didn't see me, but I remember thinking how peaceful you looked. Like you were in your own little world." Emma laughed softly, a sound that seemed to blend with the patter of rain outside. "That's funny. I remember that day too. But I had no idea anyone noticed me." Alex's smile lingered, but there was a hint of something else behind it, something wistful. "I noticed, but I didn't know how to. I don't know, start a conversation. I wasn't sure you'd even want to talk to me." Emma's heart tightened. She had walked past him many times without speaking, often thinking he seemed polite but distant. She had never imagined that he had noticed her in such a quiet, thoughtful way. "I guess we've been circling each other for months without even realizing it," she said, her voice almost a whisper. They both laughed, but it was a gentle, reflective kind of laugh, the kind that comes from shared understanding. The storm outside seemed to fade further, replaced by the warmth of memory and the quiet intimacy of two people opening up for the first time. "You know," Emma said, shifting slightly on the couch, "I've thought about saying hello sometimes. But I didn't want to seem, I don't know, pushy or awkward." Alex's gaze softened. "I think we both felt that. We wanted to reach out, but didn't know how. Funny how fear keeps us apart, even when everything else seems so simple." Emma nodded. She remembered the small moments, the polite nods in the hallway, the shared smiles while picking up mail, the occasional wave from across the street. Each gesture had felt fleeting, ordinary. Yet now, in this quiet, stormlit room, those memories seemed to carry a weight they never had before. "I guess life just gets in the way sometimes," Alex murmured. "Jobs, schedules, responsibilities. And then before you know it, months pass, and you wonder why you never said what you were feeling." Emma's fingers brushed the edge of the blanket. She remembered nights like this one, when the world was quiet and her heart ached for something more, something she couldn't quite define. She realized that tonight, seeing Alex here, all that unspoken longing seemed to converge in one perfect unexpected moment. "You know," she said softly, "it's strange. I've seen you around so many times, and yet I never realized how much I wanted to know you better." Alex's eyes lit up, a spark of hope mingling with the lingering vulnerability. "I've felt the same. And I guess the storm tonight, it made it possible to finally talk. To really talk." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was a simple, honest warmth, not the rush of infatuation, but the steady glow of connection. She could feel the years of unspoken thoughts and quiet admiration folding into this moment, like pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. For a while, they simply sat there, speaking softly about small things: their favorite books, childhood memories, the quiet corners of the city they liked to wander. With every word, every shared laugh, the bond between them grew stronger, delicate but undeniable. Emma thought about all the times she had walked past Alex without speaking, all the little what-ifs that had built up over months. Now, sitting here, hearing him laugh at a story from her childhood, she realized that those moments had not been wasted. They had been building something quietly, patiently, that neither of them had expected. Alex caught her gaze and smiled. A small, gentle smile that seemed to carry years of unsaid words. I guess sometimes we wait for the right moment without even realizing it. And maybe tonight is that moment for us? Emma's heart swelled. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or whether life would return to its ordinary rhythms. But in this quiet living room, with the storm slowly dying outside, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that what had been left unsaid for months might finally have a chance to be heard. Hope that two people quietly drawn to each other could find their way together. And most of all, hope that a single knock at the door could change everything. The morning after the storm, sunlight spilled through the thin curtains of Emma's apartment, casting golden streaks across the living room. The rain had passed completely, leaving the streets sparkling, the air crisp and fresh. Emma sat at her small kitchen table, sipping coffee, her thoughts still lingering on the night before. Alex had stayed until the storm fully subsided, helping her tidy up the small puddles that had formed near the doorway. Their laughter had carried through the apartment as they worked side by side, and Emma could still feel the warmth of their shared glances. It was simple, domestic, yet profoundly intimate, the kind of connection that went beyond words, beyond physical gestures, into something deeper, something that quietly reshaped the heart. She heard a soft knock at the door, and her heart skipped. It was Alex, holding his own cup of coffee, wrapped in a light jacket that had dried overnight. "Morning," he said, his voice gentle but tinged with nerves. "Morning," Emma replied, her voice softer than usual. "Come in." He stepped inside, the familiar comfort of his presence, making the room feel smaller, warmer, and somehow more alive. They moved to the living room, sitting across from each other with their mugs. And for a moment, silence settled again, not awkward, but loaded with anticipation. Emma could feel it. This was the moment that could change everything between them. The storm had already forced confessions into the open. Now, the quiet morning was asking them to face what had been lingering in the shadows for months. Alex set his mug down, running a hand through his hair, his gaze never leaving hers. "Emma, I think there's something I need to say," he began, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Something I've been holding back for far too long." Emma's heart raced. She nodded slightly, encouraging him, though her own breath caught in her chest. "I've tried to be patient," he continued. "I've tried to wait for the right moment, the right words. But I can't anymore. I need to tell you that. I care about you, more than I've let myself admit, more than I can explain in words." Emma's chest tightened. She had felt it too, the quiet longing, the fascination, the admiration that had grown silently for months. She had wondered if he felt it as strongly as she did. Hearing him finally speak the truth, aloud and unreserved, made something in her heart surge. A mixture of relief and joy. "I feel the same way," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been waiting for this too, though I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know if you felt it, or if I was just imagining things." Alex's face softened into a full, genuine smile, and for the first time, Emma saw the weight of months of hesitation lift from his shoulders. "You weren't imagining it," he said quietly. "It's been real. Every look, every small moment we shared, that's been real for me." They both laughed softly, a sound mingling relief, wonder, and the quiet magic of shared understanding. It was astonishing how months of unspoken thoughts could suddenly find clarity in one honest conversation. The sunlight streaming through the window seemed to reflect their own sense of illumination. The room, once a simple space for ordinary life, now felt transformed, a witness to a truth finally acknowledged, I guess. Alex said after a pause, "Sometimes life needs a little push. Or a storm." He smiled, the playful edge breaking through the intensity of his words. "It forces you to face what you've been too cautious to admit." Emma nodded, smiling in return. "I think you're right. I don't want to wait any longer either. I've been too careful for too long." Alex reached across the small space between them, gently taking her hand. The touch was electric in the most subtle, emotional way, a reassurance, a connection, a promise. "So, we start now?" He asked the question, simple, yet heavy with hope. Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her smile was steady and confident. "We start now," she said. For the next few moments, they simply sat together, hands clasped, hearts in quiet conversation. Words were unnecessary. The emotions that had built over months spoke louder than any sentence could. They had crossed the threshold of hesitation into honesty. And in that honesty lay the turning point, the place where longing became recognition. Hesitation became courage, and quiet admiration became shared understanding. Outside, the world had been washed clean by the storm. Inside, Emma and Alex had found a similar renewal. The past, with its missed opportunities and quiet longing, had brought them here. And now, in the present, they were free to move forward together. Unburdened by the weight of what had gone unsaid, Alex squeezed her hand gently. "I've wanted this for so long," he admitted, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "But I think maybe the best things are worth waiting for." Emma smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest she hadn't felt in years. "I agree, and I think it was worth waiting, just to get here to now." For a moment, they let the silence fill the room, again not the heavy silence of uncertainty, but the gentle, comfortable silence of hearts aligned. The storm had passed, but the turning point it created would remain, a memory etched in both their hearts. And in that quiet morning, with sunlight painting the room gold and the faint sound of distant rain still lingering, Emma realized something profound. Sometimes, the bravest act of love is simply speaking the truth. And in that truth, two hearts could finally meet. Part 6. The resolution, the soft knock at the door, startled them both. For a brief moment, neither moved, each still holding the other's hand. Hearts steady after so many unspoken emotions had finally been set free. Then Emma gently stood, giving Alex a reassuring smile before walking toward the door. When she opened it, she found Mrs. Carter, their elderly neighbor from across the hall, holding a tray with 2 muffins. "I baked too many," the older woman said, her voice bright. "Thought you two might like some after last night's storm." Emma laughed softly, her chest still light from the confession moments earlier. "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Carter. Please come in for a minute. This is Alex." Mrs. Carter smiled knowingly at Alex, a spark of gentle amusement in her eyes. "Ah, the helpful neighbor who braved the thunder. I saw you helping her last night. It's good to have people who care." "Okay." Alex smiled, a faint blush touching his face. "Just trying to make sure everyone was safe," he said humbly. After a few minutes of small talk, Mrs. Carter left, leaving the scent of warm cinnamon muffins behind. As the door closed, Emma turned to Alex with a quiet laugh. "She's probably been waiting to say that since last night." Alex chuckled. "She's not wrong, though. I did care. Maybe more than I should have admitted back then." Emma looked at him for a long moment, then nodded softly. "And I'm glad you finally did." They sat back down on the couch, the muffins untouched for now. Outside, sunlight danced across the rooftops, a few drops of water still sliding down the window panes. The city seemed at peace again, washed clean by the night's storm. For a while they spoke in gentle tones, sharing fragments of the past, memories of quiet moments, of shared smiles in the hallway, of times they almost said something but didn't. It was strange how all those half moments now seemed to make perfect sense, as if life had been quietly weaving its way toward this day, you know? Emma said after a pause, "I used to think love always came loudly. Big gestures, perfect timing, fireworks. But now, I think maybe it's the quiet things that matter most." Alex nodded slowly, like helping someone during a storm. She smiled. "Exactly. Like that." He leaned back, looking thoughtful. "You've always been strong, Emma. I noticed that even before we really knew each other. The way you take care of things, the way you stay calm. I admired that. I guess I was afraid that what I felt might complicate your life." Emma's voice softened. "It wouldn't have complicated it, Alex. It might have made it better." For a moment, emotion filled the silence again, gentle, unspoken, but clear. This wasn't the start of a whirlwind romance. It was the recognition of something real and earned, something that had been growing quietly, faithfully. Waiting for the right season to bloom, Alex exhaled, the last of his hesitation leaving with that breath. Then maybe, he said, we can try. Slowly, just see where this goes. Emma's smile was full and peaceful. I'd like that. No rushing, just real. The simplicity of that promise was enough. They didn't need dramatic declarations or grand vows. The sincerity in their voices, the steadiness in their eyes, it was enough to mark a new beginning. As the morning stretched on, they decided to take a walk. The streets glistened with sunlight reflecting off rain puddles. Children were out with rubber boots splashing and laughing. The neighborhood that had seemed gloomy only hours ago now felt alive again. Filled with the soft hum of renewal, Emma and Alex walked side by side, occasionally brushing shoulders. Every so often, they'd glance at each other, half smiling, half at how natural it all felt now. Funny, Alex said. A storm brought us together. Emma looked up at him, eyes warm. Sometimes storms do that. They clear the sky so something new can grow. By the time they reached the small park at the corner, the world seemed freshly painted. The air smelled of wet earth and promise. They sat on a bench, watching the trees sway gently, their branches glittering with droplets. I think, Emma said quietly, for the first time in a long while, I feel at peace. Alex nodded. Me too. For a moment, neither spoke again. There was no need to. The silence between them wasn't emptiness. It was comfort, understanding, kind of stillness that only comes when tea. The rain had lessened to a gentle patter by the time Alex finally relaxed into the sofa, the towel long since discarded. Outside, the street was slick with water, reflecting the dim glow of the streetlights. Emma sat opposite him, sipping her now lukewarm tea, the quiet hum of the storm still echoing in her ears. For a moment, neither spoke. Words felt unnecessary, replaced by the soft rhythm of the rain and the shared awareness of the space between them. And then, almost imperceptibly, the air shifted. Alex reached for the small bookshelf by the window, his fingers brushing over the spines of the novels Emma had collected over the years. His hand paused on a weathered copy of a poetry book, its pages marked with faint notes in pencil. "You've still read this?" he asked, his voice quiet but curious. Emma glanced at it and smiled softly. Yes, it was my favorite in college. There's something comforting about words that someone else has felt, isn't there? Alex nodded slowly. I get that. I think that's why I noticed you in the park all those months ago. You seemed thoughtful, like you carried a whole world inside you, and I wanted to see it. Emma's heart skipped. It was one thing to have remembered him noticing her, but another to hear it said aloud in the present with such sincerity. I never knew, she murmured. I always thought maybe you didn't care. I cared, Alex said, leaning back and running a hand through his wet hair. I just didn't know how to show it without feeling awkward. I didn't want to ruin the quiet I felt when I saw you. It sounded strange even to me. Emma reached for her cup, her hands trembling slightly as if the warmth of it mirrored the sudden flutter in her chest. She thought about all the times she had walked past him, all the small moments of recognition that had gone unspoken. And now here he was present, open, vulnerably, and it made her realize how long she had silently hoped for this exact moment. The storm outside picked up again. Not in a roar this time, but in soft, persistent drumming against the windows. Emma watched the droplets race down the glass and thought about how life sometimes mirrored the rain, unpredictable, relentless, but capable of renewing everything it touched. And then, as if fate had decided to intervene, there was a sudden flash of lightning that lit the living room for a heartbeat, followed by a distant roll of thunder. The lights flickered, and Alex instinctively leaned toward the window to check the power. In that small, unguarded moment, Emma noticed something she hadn't before: the way he moved, careful yet confident, completely unaware of the effect he had on her. You know, Alex said, turning back to her with a faint smile. I think maybe tonight is one of those moments where life decides to give you a second chance. A small coincidence or maybe fate. Emma tilted her head, intrigued. Fate? She asked softly. Yes, he said, settling back onto the sofa. I mean, we've crossed paths so many times without realizing it. And now, with the storm, and, well, everything tonight. It's like the universe said. This is the moment. Emma laughed lightly, a sound that carried relief, curiosity, and something deeper she couldn't yet name. I like that idea. The universe has good timing. Their conversation drifted naturally into memories from the past few months, the awkward waves in the hallway, the brief exchanges at the mailbox, the moments when they had almost spoken but never did. With every story, the connection between them deepened, and Emma realized that the bond she had thought was fragile had actually been quietly strengthening. All along, Alex's gaze met hers across the small coffee table, a steady intensity in his eyes. I guess the truth is, he said, sometimes we wait too long to notice the right person. But tonight feels right, and I don't want to waste it. Emma's chest tightened. She had imagined this conversation in her mind countless times, each version filled with what-ifs, but none had felt as genuine, as grounding, as the moment unfolding before her. The storm, the accidental knock, the shared silence had all converged to create something delicate and undeniable for a while. They simply sat there speaking quietly, letting the rain dictate the rhythm of the room. The storm had become a kind of witness to their unspoken understanding, each drop echoing the pulse of new possibilities between them. Then, without warning, the power went out entirely. Darkness enveloped the apartment, and the sudden absence of light made their surroundings feel intimate in a way that daylight never could. Alex laughed softly, a nervous but genuine sound. Well, I guess the universe really likes to make things dramatic. Emma joined his laughter, the sound mingling with the rain outside. It does seem that way, she admitted, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Despite the darkness, she didn't feel afraid. Instead, there was a sense of clarity, as if the storm had stripped away pretense and left only truth in that quiet, dimly lit room. Emma realized something profound. Sometimes the present, the exact moment you are in, is more powerful than any past or future. All the small coincidences, missed greetings, and quiet longing had led to this. And as she looked at Alex, she understood that the storm hadn't just brought him to her doorstep. It had reignited feelings she didn't even know she was ready to embrace. And just as she opened her mouth to speak, there was a sudden tapping on the window, soft, deliberate, and unmistakably human. Both Emma and Alex froze, glancing toward the sound. Outside, in the dim light of the street lamp, a shadow moved. The shadow at the window had vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving the apartment in a soft, quiet darkness broken only by the occasional flicker of lightning outside. Emma and Alex sat in the dim glow of the storm's aftermath, their hearts still caught in the rhythm of the evening. Neither spoke at first, both acutely aware of the unspoken tension that had been growing between them since the moment Alex had stepped through her door. Emma's fingers toyed with the edge of the blanket, a nervous habit she had carried for years. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words felt too fragile, too heavy to risk in the dark. All her life she had been careful with her feelings, polite and measured, guarding her heart from disappointment. And now, with Alex sitting mere feet away, vulnerability felt both terrifying and irresistible. Alex, for his part, seemed equally hesitant. He stared at the faint patterns of rain on the window, his jaw tight as if wrestling with thoughts he had kept bottled up for months. He had admired Emma from afar, respected her quiet strength, and yet every time he had tried to bridge the distance, something held him back, a fear of misreading signs, a fear of losing the subtle comfort of seeing her from a distance. Finally, Alex broke the silence. His voice was low, hesitant, but steady. Emma, there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time. Emma's heart leaped. She looked at him, her eyes wide, her breath caught somewhere between hope and apprehension. You don't have to, she said softly. trying to mask the nervous excitement in her tone. "No," Alex said, shaking his head. "I do. I can't keep pretending that nothing has changed or that I don't feel." "What I feel?" Emma swallowed hard, feeling her chest tighten. She understood exactly what he meant, though she had never allowed herself to voice it. The truth had been simmering quietly inside her for months, the quiet admiration, the longing for moments that never seemed possible, the small daydreams where she imagined them speaking freely, laughing together, maybe even leaning on one another in ways neither had dared. She began, then stopped, searching for the right words. "I felt the same way. I think I've always felt it. But I didn't know if it was just me imagining things." Alex's eyes softened. A small, genuine smile appeared, fleeting but luminous in the dim room. "It wasn't just you," he said gently. "I've noticed every little thing, the way you smile when you think no one's looking. It's the way you pause in the hallway as if weighing words you never speak. I've been too scared to say anything, too scared of ruining what we already had, even if it was nothing." Emma's throat tightened with emotion. Hearing him voice the very thoughts that had kept her awake on countless nights was overwhelming, yet profoundly comforting. She had always believed that love required grand gestures or dramatic declarations. But here it was, quiet and steady, growing between two people who had simply noticed each other over time. "I think." She whispered that maybe we were both waiting for the right moment. And somehow, the storm brought it here. Alex nodded, his gaze unwavering. "The storm." Nice. It's strange how something as ordinary as rain can create something extraordinary. Maybe it gives us permission to feel things we've kept hidden. For a moment, the room was filled with silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. Each heartbeat, each glance carried meaning. Emma felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the storm outside. It was the warmth of being understood, of being truly seen by someone who had shared the same longing, the same hesitation, and the same hope. "I always wondered," Kay said softly, "if you felt it too. This connection. But I was too afraid to risk it. Afraid that maybe it was just me imagining it." Emma reached for his hand without thinking, her fingers brushing against his in a tentative yet deliberate gesture. The simple touch spoke volumes, reassurance, acknowledgement. And the quiet promise that neither of them was alone in this feeling anymore. "You weren't imagining it," she whispered. "Not for a second." Alex's smile widened, though it remained gentle and reflective. Not rushed, not eager, just